Great. Well, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I just hit the record button, and if you wouldn't mind going in and just typing your name, where you live, and what you do. Thank you so much. Oh, Montana. Awesome. And Jim here in my own Bay Area in Morgan Hill. Great and welcome. We just have 30 minutes today, so I'm going to go ahead and get started and dive right in. And I'd like to welcome you to our Insights Discovery webinar. I am a partner and a licensed practitioner with Insights Discovery, and that is the content or the topic for our webinar today. And I can see you both now, just show of hands, how many of you are familiar with Insights Discovery? Maybe you've heard about it. Okay, great. And I know, Jim, we've worked on it together. I want to spend just a minute or so highlighting why we are here. So I'm going to ask you a question. The percent of breakdowns in task caused by breakdowns connected to teaming, communication, and/or relationships. What do you think that number is? Go ahead and type into the chat or come off mute and let me know what percent of breakdowns in task are caused by teaming, communication, or relationships. What do you think? According to the Gallup organization is my stat. Just take a wild guess. Is it high? Is it low? Yeah, Jim says 75 to 80. And Nicole, I see you're in HR, so you're going high there with 85%. Yes, absolutely right. You are right in the zone. According to the Gallup organization, between 72 and 80% of the time, when there's a breakdown in task, it's because of teaming, communication, and/or relationships. And I'm sure you've seen these stats, but this gives a little bit of idea of what goes into communicating. When we communicate, 7% are the words we use. 38% we attribute to tone of voice and interpretation, and 55% goes into context and body language, also interpretation. So in other words, only 7% of communication is about what, and 93% is about how, and the people involved in interpreting the how. And this never ceases to amaze me how big these numbers are. And finally, according to the Harvard Business Review, this was a while ago, and I can only imagine the number has gone up. 87% of business issues are due to the lack of interpersonal communication skills, not the competencies of the parties. And you can just give me a thumbs up or a nod if this has been your experience. But what we are finding more and more is that really it's communication that's getting in the way of our ability to do our jobs. And we also know that when teams are more connected, they produce better results. So what we're going to talk about today is how to build connection through the Insights Discovery model. But before we get too far into that, I'd love to hear from you. What's your biggest challenge when it comes to communicating? And you can either come off mute or type it into the chat. And you may be thinking, gosh, I just have to pick one. But let me know some of your biggest challenges when it comes to communicating.
Nicole, I'll defer to you if you're ready.
Yeah. So I guess one of my biggest challenges that I've been facing for the last year, and Brooke, you came, so I'm part of Banner Bank, and we did the Insights Discovery, and the biggest thing that I'm having my biggest challenge with communicating is them not understanding the message or understanding what I'm trying to say. And no matter how in layman's terms, and it, of course it's around systems. And so not everybody's systems oriented or has the same systems knowledge, and just kind of understanding or portraying what the process is and the different things around why we're doing an initiative. And it's to my other honestly HR team members, and so you would think that there would be some instinct and some like-mindedness, and it's just we're trying to, you know, incorporate this new project or this new mindset of central services and just trying to communicate the advantages and how this is going to work. And it's just not been, I mean, we can say the same message and it's just, they're not hearing it.
Yeah.
They're not hearing it, even though it's been said a number of times.
Yeah, no, I know, Nicole, and I'm so glad you're here and it's nice to see you again. Thanks for the reminder on where we met. And I'm
Yeah.
actually coming back to Banner in a few weeks for the
I
senior
know.
leadership team.
Excited.
So, but no, I'm hearing you. And I think that we all can relate to this in some way. Like I've communicated it. Why aren't they hearing it? Why aren't they absorbing this information? And I think this is something we all can relate to. And what I think you'll find, and what we'll probe into more today, is that often we are communicating in a way that works for us. It's our natural style, but maybe it's not the way the other person needs to hear it. So you mentioned the word technical or systems. You know, there's a lot of ways to talk about technical facets and systems. And if someone leads with a different color energy, if we're too technical or really technical, they may just not be able to hear it. So how can we adjust or adapt our message so that they can still get the technical details, but in a way that will land for them? And I'm going to go into that today. That's one of the things we're going to cover. And also we can talk more about it when we see each other in a few weeks. But it's often, we ask ourselves, why do I keep talking about this and they're not getting it? It's usually because we're talking in a way that works for us. And have we thought about what will work for them to be able to hear the info?
My input is I'm a career corporate attorney. And so my mission has always been client service. So I'm attuned to listening to what the client representative needs. But my biggest issue with communicating is getting them to reveal the entire context of what they're looking for so that I can respond more efficiently and accurately.
Yeah.
You know, so my issues with a dispersed workforce like this are a constant struggle to understand the transactional or situational context.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. That is also so key. And again, I'm seeing nods and I'm nodding myself. And I think when I think about this question, what comes to mind is, you know, how do we ask questions about what we're looking for? So in this case, context. But again, I think it's about asking that question in a way that the other person can hear. And often we think we're saying, hey, I need more context. But for the other person, that may not be an area that they're used to communicating in or they're comfortable communicating in. So how do we draw that out in them in a way that works for them? So in both of these examples, these are great examples. You might have heard a theme, which is I'm thinking about the other person. What are their needs in this communication, and how do I appeal to those to get, well, I was going to say to get what I need, and that sounds kind of harsh, but it's not meant to. It's really, you know, how do I meet their needs so that both of our sets of needs are met? So let's talk about that specifically. What we're going to cover today is how to better understand your own and others' communication preferences, how to better connect with your colleagues to improve your collaboration. So I think this will be helpful in both of your situations, and a common language to help overcome challenges and conflict. So since both of you are familiar with Insights Discovery, I'll keep this brief, but for those who will watch the recording, I'm going to be talking about a model called Insights Discovery, which focuses on improving personal, interpersonal, and team effectiveness. It's a color-based model that provides a common language about strengths and what drives our behavior in the workplace, but is also based in psychology, the psychology of Dr. Carl Jung. So many of you out there have probably done something like this, or maybe even done Insights, and I really appreciate it because it covers the simplicity of the color preferences, but also the heft or the weight of the psychology behind it. And my name is Brooke Schiller. I'm a facilitator, a keynote speaker, a coach, consultant, and thought partner. And I've worked extensively with insights discovery over the last almost 20 years. So I'm going to invite you to stay till the end today because I'm going to offer you some complimentary insights discovery coaching. I know the two of you on the call have received your profile, but for the sake of the recording, I'm offering some complimentary profiles and coaching that goes with it. So I'm going to start really briefly just putting this slide or this picture up on the screen to talk about the power of perception. You will see the world differently from how other people see it. And the key is dialogue. And this is an image that's been around for many years. And some people see an old woman, some people see a young woman, some people see both. Some people see other things. But that's the key, that there are many ways to look at a situation and they come from your perceptions. So let me give you a scenario just to play with here. So let's just say that your group has a new manager and you've joined the first virtual team meeting led by this person. The manager, who is your boss, greeted everyone else on the call by name, but did not greet you. What are your immediate thoughts and feelings? And go ahead and type that into the chat or come off mute.
My first thought would be it could be a oversight. And my second thought is if it's not just a mere unintended oversight, that it's intentional, and I need to understand what's behind that intention.
Thanks, Jim. You have now just gone the whole spectrum from maybe it was accidental, and if not, maybe I need to understand that. Great, thank you. And Nicole, hi, Kenzie. I see that you've joined as well. Nicole, did you have any immediate thoughts?
Yeah, it was like, well, what happened? Did they not know I was on the meeting or yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And so we have seen there just the range of responses, anything from, oh, it was probably accidental to, whoa, did they not see me? What's going on there? And that is the power of perception. And then what you do next will be based on that. If you felt like, oh, it was just an oversight, your actions are going to look really different than if you thought, maybe they don't like me, maybe I'm in trouble. And really, we need to pay close attention to the power of perception because it is in every communication, every interaction we have. And really, perception is reality. There's only perception. We need to see others from their view. And I just was on a call last night where I was talking about positive intelligence with some colleagues. And one of the things they taught us is everybody is 10% right. So when you go in with that assumption that they're going to have something that is right, then it opens us up to say, yes, and. We're all headed in the same direction, but sometimes we're carrying different maps. And insights can be a common map that we all share. And it's really about adapting and connecting. And that's what I want to get to before we wrap today to help you both with the situations that you shared when we talked about your challenges. But for right now, the first thing I want to cover just as an overview of the model is it's a 4-color model. That we call these color energies. And as I'm describing each of the 4, I just want you to pay attention to which ones sound most like you. Okay, so I'm going to start first with fiery red. And when we think about fiery red and how it shows up and how we communicate, it often shows up as bold, assertive, results-driven, action-oriented, and determined. Fiery red energy, when we use it, is extroverted in nature with a thinking preference when it comes to decisions. Next, we're going to look at earth green in the lower left-hand corner. And when we're using our earth green, we are collaborative, encouraging, mentoring, patient, relaxed. I often use the words coach, counselor, and mentor. Earth green, when we're using it, we are using more of our introverted preference with a feeling preference when it comes to decisions. And those are opposite on the insights wheel, as you can see. So very different preferences, but complementary in nature. Sunshine yellow, when we're using it, we are social, dynamic, demonstrative, enthusiastic, and persuasive. We have the unique ability to see the big picture, see what's next, and get people excited about it. And sunshine yellow is on that right side of the wheel, and it shares the extroverted preference with fiery red, and is on the bottom half of the wheel and shares the feeling preference when it comes to decisions with earth green. And then last, but certainly not least, our cool blue is what comes out when we are communicating in an analytical way, precise, cautious, detail-oriented, and more formal. And cool blue energy is introverted in nature with a thinking preference when it comes to decisions. So just like red and green, blue and yellow are opposite on the wheel, but complementary in nature. So Nicole, you mentioned an example earlier where you're talking about systems and technical aspects. And I would venture to guess that there is some sort of cool blue energy as a preference in that. But when we're communicating those systems and the technical aspects to someone who leads with a different color, it's really about how do we convey the technical aspects in a way that will land with them. Now, all of these, regardless of how you're perceiving them, all of these words on this screen are what we would call good day behaviors. These are strengths. These are positive expressions of how people communicate. And what I'm going to do is flip the script a little bit and talk about what happens on a bad day when we are under stress or pressure, when we are overusing or only using a color. You'll see that the words have changed. So thinking about your own preferences and thinking about how you interact with others, what do you notice about where you fall on this wheel? If you had a strong preference for a color, do you also notice you showing up in the bad day mode when you're under stress or pressure? I know I do. I lead with sunshine yellow energy, and sometimes I can be a little hasty when I'm under stress or pressure, moving too quickly. So I'd like to share both the good day and the bad day because we're humans and we're going to have both. It's likely you see both in yourself, and it's very likely that you're seeing both in those you work with on a day-to-day basis. And you're also probably thinking, wow, I see myself all over this color energy map. And that's right. Each of you, all of us have all 4 color energies within us. And it is really the combination that makes us the unique you. So this is not a labeling exercise. This is not putting you in a box and asking you to choose just one, but really understanding how all of these preferences are within you and how intensely or not so intensely you relate or you recognize each of these preferences. So that's what I want to ask you next. If you could come off mute or type into the chat, what color energies sound most like you? Now, I said energies on purpose. So if you want to put more than one, please feel free to do that. But which ones are really speaking to you?
Well, per the exercise we did, I'm a green blue.
The green blue.
Yeah, green blue.
I'm right on the border of green yellow as a service provider, but when that doesn't work or I'm encountering difficulties, I quickly revert to red.
Mm-hmm. Great observation, Jim. Absolutely. And Kenzie, I know you're muted, but do you want to come off mute and share your color energy preferences?
Yellow. I'm yellow all day.
Yellow all day. Yes, I know. You and I have a lot in common. Awesome. So thank you for sharing and coming off mute to share that. And it's great to hear. There's just 4 of us on this call, right? And I lead with yellow green, and the differences between our preferences and how we are recognizing that we have blends within us as well. And we can see, as Jim mentioned, what we lean towards on a good day, but what happens on a bad day. So this will never be enough time to go into all the nitty gritty in terms of those preferences. But I want to summarize by just really reinforcing that you have all these colors within you. You will have preferences, and you will have some that you really lean towards and some maybe not as much, but it's figuring out how to do two things. How do I recognize the color energies in me and others? So recognizing type or color energy preferences. And then how do I adapt in those circumstances so that my message can land, so that I can build connections with the other person? So let's talk about those last two things. So the first thing I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about recognizing type. So you just shared with all of us what you think your preferences are, but what about others? I'd like you to share or to think about. You don't need to share out loud necessarily. In fact, you probably won't want to, but think about the personal scenarios that you shared at the beginning of this, Nicole and Jim. Think about a person that you might need to connect with in those technical arenas, or when you're thinking about interpreting, legal things and having others interpret it and apply them. Think about someone that you need to recognize their preferences, someone that you'd like to connect with. And you don't need to share it out loud, but I'd like you, wherever you're taking notes, to write their name down and just, have it for you. And know that every time you encounter someone, you have the opportunity to recognize style and style preferences. So I'm going to give you 2 steps to think about. So think about your person. What do you notice in terms of their preferences towards introversion or extroversion? Now, do you notice someone who's more internally focused and charged, or do you notice someone who's more externally focused and charged, meaning they get their energy from external sources, or do they need quiet time and alone time? And right now you're just doing your best guess. You don't have to be right, but just think, what do you notice? And then do you notice someone with a thinking preference, meaning they use a lot of facts and figures, they bring spreadsheets, they're talking about data? Or do you notice someone with more of a feeling preference, like they're talking about impacts to the team or how they feel about something? Just make a note. What do you notice about this person? And then some other clues you can look for are things like body language, verbal style, interactions with them, and even their work environment. What's their office like? What does their workspace look like? And you can look for clusters of signals. So thinking about your person, do you see someone who's more formal in nature or more relaxed? So that would indicate more of a thinking preference or a feeling preference. Do you see someone who is more quiet and reserved or more quick and externally focused? And that might indicate more of an introverted preference or an extroverted preference. And those 2 sets of questions can help you identify what you think their primary color is. So I'll give you a quick example. I have a family member whose communication style is very different from mine. We often spar, and I wonder why. And when I think about this and I do this exercise, it takes the energy or the fire out of it and really has me looking for clues and cues. And I noticed someone who is definitely got a stronger thinking preference. So top of the wheel, more formal in nature, and who's more extroverted, very used to and comfortable putting their perspective out there and engaging in debate with others. So if I were to guess what I think this person's primary color is, that's going to put me over here in this fiery red quadrant. And it's a starting place, really. That's all it is. It's a starting place. So if I come to them and I practice and I work on bringing my fiery red, which, by the way, happens to be my 3rd in the order of preferences, if I bring a little bit of that to our conversation and I bring it to that interaction, chances are I'm going to meet them more in the middle. They're going to feel it, they're going to experience it, and then we're going to build a stronger connection. And just so you know, I've tried it and it has worked. It has worked. Now, is it perfect? No, but we're making progress. And that's the thing, is that you don't have to be right when you're trying to recognize type. Just ask yourself 2 sets of questions and give something a try. Because I guarantee you the chances of you being closer to where the other person is are much greater if you do this than if you do nothing at all. So for the examples you brought up at the beginning of our call today, think about your audience. What do I think their color energies are? And if it's a large group, like it might be in the case for you, Nicole, I like to incorporate a little bit of all 4 colors into my communication. So I'm confident that I'm meeting the needs of everyone on the other end of the email or the initiative or the rollout. And that's actually the next thing and the last thing I want to cover today is how do we put this into practice? How do we adapt? So we define adapting as consciously modifying our own behavior with the intention of better meeting the color energy needs of the other person and successfully connecting with them. Baby steps, 5% is all it takes to make a difference. And I'm going to share relatively quickly a series of slides that'll give you some do's and don'ts for communicating with each of the colors. I am recording this and I will send this to you after so that if I go too quickly, you can refer to these. But these are just some high-level tips on what to do and not to do when I'm communicating with fiery red, as I shared in my example. I'm going to want to be direct and to the point, focus on results and objectives, be confident and assertive. When I'm trying to connect with someone who leads with a lot of earth green energy, I want to be patient and supportive, ask for input before making decisions, and ask for their opinion and give them time to answer. When I'm connecting with someone with a lot of sunshine yellow energy preference, I want to be friendly and sociable, engaging and stimulating, and open and flexible. And cool blue, I'm going to make sure I'm well prepared and thorough. I'm going to put things in writing and I want to let them consider all of the details. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list of the things that you can do. But as I mentioned, I'm going to offer each of you an updated Insights Discovery profile. So you'll have a much longer list. And when we meet for our coaching session, we can also talk about tips and tricks for your specific person. So just take a moment as we get ready to wrap up today. Imagine if you were able to cultivate connection on your team, to optimize your business results, to solve for the challenges you brought up at the beginning of our call. What benefit would that bring to your business? Imagine just for a moment, if you want to type it into the chat or you want to come off mute or just let that sink in, because so often I think folks think that investing in communication skills is a nice to have. It's not part of our day job. Let's see if we could fit it in. But as we talked about in the beginning, it's so much a part of what we do. It's ingrained. It's not separate. And in fact, there's an activity that I recently learned that we're going to do it together that I think really helps make this point. So I'd like you just to take your fingers and take your 2 pointer fingers together. Let me see them up here. Let's do it. And I'd like you to try to circle them in opposite directions. I'm drawing it and I'm clenching my teeth right now. And Nicole, I see your face. How is that working for you? It's hard, right? But now take your fingers and touch them together. And let's just trace a circle. How was that compared to the first one?
Much easier.
Yeah, much easier, right? So I love that activity because it reminds us that when training is integrated into our work, it just flows, right? But when we're trying to do two different things at the same time and they don't feel related, it's much harder. So think about that and think about how you want to take what you learned today and put it into action. And I know we're at time, so I'm just going to give you a quick preview of some of the other things that we can do with Insights Discovery. Today, we're over here. We're talking about the introduction, but I do this in full-length workshops and in coaching sessions. We use Insights Discovery in Teams, and this is our Teams model built on the same 4 colors. And we also can use it in leadership. So again, you'll see versions of the same 4 colors, but we talk about how this applies in leadership. We use it in sales and influencing. This is our sales and influencing model. And over here in the gray, all the other things that we can do with Insights Discovery. So I'd love to continue the conversation with you about Insights and what it can do for you personally and for your organizations. And in summary, let's just talk about next steps. Some things I'd like you to do as a result of today. Identify the order of your color energy preferences. I know for those of you in the room with me, you've done that, but think about all 4, not just your top. And then think of someone at work you'd like to build a stronger connection with and see if you can identify what their primary color energy is. We started that today, but I'd like you to continue to work on it if you didn't get all the way through it. And then make a game plan for adapting to better connect with that person. And if you need help, I'm offering, as I mentioned, 3 complimentary Insights Discovery profiles. Contact me by scanning this QR code ASAP, and then let's do it. Let's debrief in the month of April. We can certainly do it sooner, but I'd love to get you a new profile and do a debrief with you in the month of April. So I'm going to leave this slide up so you can scan it. This is how you can connect with me. And with that, I just want to say thank you for being here today and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Brooks.
Thanks, Brooke.